not any special one. Uh, there was an old girl that I was seeing quite often over there that her father was in the Air Force. And
For decades, the world believed Elvis Presley died alone in Graceland, the king of rock and roll gone too soon. But newly revealed documents tell a darker, more complex story. The classified file on Elvis's death has finally surfaced, and what's inside changes everything we thought we knew. For years, the mystery surrounding his passing seemed straightforward, but the truth is much more layered and sinister. Was Elvis truly the man we thought he was, or was there a darker side to the king's life and death that the world was never meant to see? Elvis Presley's rise to fame is nothing short of legendary. Born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, he came from humble beginnings, his family struggling to make ends meet. But Elvis was different from the other kids in town. His voice, raw and soulful, set him apart from the start. By the time he was a teenager, his love for music was undeniable. With the release of his first single, That's All Right, in 1954, Elvis catapulted from regional fame to global superstardom. His combination of rock, blues, and gospel influences created a sound like no other, and the world couldn't get enough. His electric performances, wild hair, and gyrating hips quickly became iconic, with fans, especially young women, going wild at his every move. He was more than just a musician. He was a cultural revolution. Elvis wasn't just a singer, he was an agent of change. His music bridged racial divides and introduced a new era in popular culture. But with fame came scrutiny, and his larger-than-life status made him a target for government watch. His influence over the youth was so significant that J. Edgar Hoover's FBI kept a close eye on him. Elvis had become a national security figure, a threat in the eyes of the authorities. He wasn't just a pop icon anymore. He was a symbol of rebellion, of cultural change, and that made him dangerous in the eyes of the U.S. government. His ability to sway public opinion was something Hoover feared, especially considering the racial tensions and social upheavals of the 1960s. But Elvis wasn't just being watched by the FBI. His influence stretched far beyond the realm of music and entertainment. He had connections with U.S. presidents, most notably Richard Nixon, with whom he had a famous meeting in the White House in 1970. Elvis wasn't just a celebrity, he was a political figure, rubbing shoulders with the most powerful people in America. His celebrity power was immense, and it wasn't just reserved for the music industry. Hollywood, Washington, and the music world all intersected at the crossroads of Elvis Presley's career. But with this power came controversies, and the press was all too eager to exploit them. From his draft-dodging years to his relationships with powerful figures in the entertainment industry, Elvis's life was filled with rumors and allegations that painted him as something more than a rock star. He was a man who walked a fine line between fame and infamy, always in the public eye, always under the microscope. The combination of Elvis's influence, his celebrity connections, and his controversies made him a person of interest to far more than just fans and journalists. He was someone who could change the course of history, and that made him a man of mystery, a man worth watching. And now, decades later, with the release of the FBI's classified files, we begin to understand just how deep the intrigue around Elvis Presley really went. He was more than just the king of rock and roll. He was a complex figure, caught in a web of power, politics, and secrecy. Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977, in the bathroom at Graceland, his beloved Memphis estate. The public story has always been clear. The king of rock and roll, at just 42 years old, passed away from a heart attack. Official reports linked the fatal attack to years of prescription drug use, a cocktail of painkillers, sedatives, and amphetamines that had been prescribed to Elvis in an effort to manage his chronic pain and insomnia. The toxic combination, the doctors explained, led to heart failure, sending Elvis into a fatal collapse while alone in the bathroom. The world mourned the loss of a musical legend, but as the days passed, strange details began to emerge. Whispers began almost immediately. Fans, family members, and even some of the staff at Graceland started questioning what had really happened that night. Things didn't quite add up. Witness statements conflicted from the very beginning. Some insisted that Elvis had been feeling unwell for days, while others claimed that he was in good spirits just hours before his death. Some accounts said that his bodyguards were the first to discover him, while others suggested that members of his inner circle had been present during the final moments, though the accounts varied wildly. In the days after his death, there was talk of irregularities in the way Elvis's body had been handled and the manner in which law enforcement had approached the investigation. But the most troubling detail, and the one that sparked the most suspicion, was the autopsy. In most high-profile deaths, especially those of celebrities, the autopsy findings are usually made public shortly after the cause of death is confirmed. However, in Elvis's case, the Presley family fought to keep the autopsy sealed. For decades, the details surrounding Elvis's final hours remained under wraps. No one knew for sure what the coroner had discovered in that report, and that secrecy only deepened the mystery. Some claimed that the autopsy had revealed more about Elvis's health than anyone was willing to admit. Were there other contributing factors? Was the official story really true, or had something darker transpired? Then came the stories. Fans around the country insisted that they had seen Elvis alive long after the reports of his death had been confirmed. These sightings didn't stop after a few months. They persisted for years. In the 1980s, reports of Elvis allegedly spotted in various cities, ranging from Florida to Arizona, surfaced frequently. Some said they'd seen him shopping. Others claimed they had exchanged glances with him on street corners. The stories grew more elaborate as the years went by, with some fans even claiming to have had conversations with the man they believed was Elvis. The sightings never stopped, though there was never any real evidence to support them. But why would Elvis fake his death, and why did people believe he might be alive? The newly released classified file on Elvis's life reveals much more than anyone could have guessed. For years, the public was in the dark about just how closely the government had monitored the king, particularly in his final years. The FBI had kept extensive files on Elvis Presley, and these files reveal a far more complex story than anyone imagined. As it turns out, Elvis had been a person of interest to the FBI long before his death. The files confirmed that Elvis was under investigation for much of his career, and it wasn't just for his rebellious music or his influence on youth culture. There were other reasons for the FBI's concern, ones that have remained hidden until now. One of the most shocking revelations is that Elvis may have had connections to the mafia. The FBI's files show that Elvis had received death threats from organized crime figures, including members of the mafia, due to his connections with certain individuals in the music industry. These ties were more than just casual associations. They ran deep, and Elvis's life was in danger. In the final year of his life, Elvis's behavior became increasingly erratic. The FBI files note that his lifestyle had begun to spiral out of control. His prescription drug dependency had worsened to the point where it was difficult for those around him to maintain any sense of normalcy. Yet those close to him continued to cover it up, shielding him from public scrutiny and attempting to protect his image. But the truth was, Elvis was struggling. His erratic behavior was becoming harder to ignore. The most disturbing part of the FBI's classified files was the suggestion that Elvis may have been working as a government informant. According to the documents, there was evidence that Elvis had been providing the FBI with information about mob-connected figures in the music industry. This would explain why the FBI had kept such a close eye on him, and why his death and the subsequent cover-up raised so many questions. Was Elvis working for the government all along? Was his role as a cultural icon merely a facade to hide his deeper involvement in a secret government operation? The revelation that Elvis might have been a covert informant paints an entirely new picture of the man behind the music. No longer just a tragic figure caught in the throes of fame and addiction, Elvis Presley emerges as someone with a far more complicated and dangerous connection to the powerful forces within American society. His death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it may have been the result of a secret, dangerous game that he was playing with some of the most influential and dangerous people in the world. With this new information, the mystery of Elvis Presley's death becomes even more enigmatic. Did the king die from heart failure, as the official story claims? Or did he disappear to avoid retribution from those who had a vested interest in keeping him quiet? The more we uncover, the less we know for sure. What is clear, however, is that Elvis Presley's legacy was not just shaped by his music, but by the complex, shadowy world he was connected to. As Elvis Presley's death became a headline heard around the world, the official story that the king of rock and roll had died from a heart attack worsened by prescription drug abuse was met with disbelief by a portion of the public. Despite the autopsy results, the whispers of foul play and a faked death began to grow louder, and new theories emerged about Elvis's final days, sparking a fascination that would last decades. One of the most compelling conspiracies was that Elvis faked his death to escape the mounting threats that had been building against him. Over the last year of his life, Elvis was a man under siege. He had become entangled with dangerous figures, including mafia-connected individuals and government agencies who had their own agendas. Elvis's ties to the underworld, particularly his rumored dealings with organized crime, became a major focal point in the speculation about his death. The mafia had allegedly threatened him over business deals gone wrong, and with his growing dependency on prescription drugs, Elvis was vulnerable. Some believed that these threats, coupled with his rapidly deteriorating health, led him to take drastic action. The theory that Elvis faked his own death became especially popular in the years following his passing. In the 1980s, rumors of sightings began to surface, with fans across the U.S. claiming they had seen Elvis alive. From Florida to Arizona, people swore they'd seen the king in public, buying groceries, walking around local stores, or even chatting in cafes. These stories became legendary, with Elvis being spotted at gas stations, diners, and hotels. One particularly famous story involved a man in Kalamazoo, Michigan, who claimed he had seen Elvis in a restaurant in broad daylight. Others insisted they had caught glimpses of him in Las Vegas, the city where Elvis once held multiple residencies. The frequency of these reports grew, fueling a growing belief that the king of rock and roll was living in secret, protected from the public eye, and hiding from those who meant him harm. Though there was no concrete evidence to confirm these sightings, they contributed to the ever-expanding legend of Elvis's death. Fans were determined to hold on to the hope that the king had not perished. They wanted to believe that despite the official record, Elvis had faked his death to escape the pressures of fame, the mafia, and even the government. But these conspiracies weren't just the result of overzealous fans. Newly declassified documents shed light on the darker side of Elvis's life, and they hinted at something much more sinister. These classified FBI files revealed that Elvis had been under the surveillance of the government for much of his career, not just because of his influence on youth, but because of his ties to organized crime. The FBI had been tracking his movements and interactions with known mobsters, and Elvis's death was not as clean as the public was led to believe. The documents suggest that the government, fearing that Elvis's power and knowledge could disrupt certain operations, might have had a hand in ensuring his disappearance. The theory of protective custody has also gained traction in recent years. The idea is that Elvis's death was staged to remove him from harm's way, and he was secretly placed in protective custody by the authorities. These documents indicate that Elvis was indeed in danger, not only from the mafia, but from other powerful figures. His knowledge of dangerous dealings in the music industry and his connections to high-profile individuals made him a target. His decision to disappear, rather than face an uncertain future, was possibly the only option left to him. The notion of protective custody suggests that Elvis may have voluntarily vanished, not because of personal turmoil, but because of the threats against his life. Then there is the Presley family's secrecy. The family fought relentlessly to keep the autopsy sealed for decades, adding another layer of intrigue to the story. The fact that they were so protective of the details surrounding Elvis's death only raised more questions. Why would they go to such lengths to keep the autopsy hidden? Was it to protect Elvis's reputation? Or was there more at play, something that could expose a much larger, darker conspiracy? The Presley family, known for their devotion to Elvis, were equally protective of his legacy. But the fact that they were willing to engage in such a battle to keep the autopsy sealed only suggests that they were trying to prevent something from coming to light, perhaps something that would expose a deeper, more dangerous truth about Elvis's life and death. As we attempt to piece together the puzzle of Elvis Presley's death, the official record continues to clash with the many theories that have emerged over the years. The official story, that Elvis died from heart failure, worsened by prescription drug abuse, seems like a neat and straightforward explanation. But as we've learned from the newly declassified FBI files, the story is far more complicated. The government's close surveillance of Elvis, as evidenced by the FBI's extensive files, reveals just how much the authorities feared his influence and potential power. Elvis wasn't simply a pop star. He was a man with ties to powerful figures, both in and outside of the entertainment industry. These connections made him both a valuable asset and a potential threat. The FBI watched him closely, not only because of his ability to sway public opinion, but also because of his links to organized crime. As his health deteriorated and the threats against him grew, the government's interest in him became more intense. The question becomes, was Elvis simply a casualty of his own fame, or was his death orchestrated by forces beyond his control? Some people believe that Elvis died naturally, that the king's untimely death was a tragic consequence of his own excesses. His prescription drug dependency, combined with his increasing stress and erratic behavior, likely led to his early demise. This explanation fits the facts of his final days, but it doesn't fully account for the eerie secrecy surrounding his death. The autopsy, hidden from the public for decades, adds an air of mystery to the official story. Was there something in those reports that would have painted a different picture of Elvis's death? Something the public wasn't meant to know? Others believe that Elvis was silenced. His ties to the mafia and his potential work as a government informant have led some to speculate that Elvis was either targeted by organized crime or the government itself. Given the enormous power Elvis wielded, both as a cultural icon and as a figure with secret knowledge, some believe that those who were threatened by him might have taken extreme measures to ensure his silence. Whether it was a mafia hit or government action, some feel that the official story of Elvis's death was a cover-up for a far more dangerous truth. Finally, there is the theory that Elvis faked his own death. The multiple sightings of Elvis across the United States in the years following his death have made this theory a persistent part of the legend. Could it be that Elvis, fed up with the constant pressures of fame and the threats that surrounded him, decided to stage his death and disappear? Perhaps he sought protection in a place where no one would find him, far from the prying eyes of the public and the dangers that followed him. The idea that Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, simply walked away from it all remains one of the most compelling and enduring theories surrounding his death. The official record says Elvis Presley died at the age of 42 from heart failure. The FBI files show that the government watched him closely, worried about his power and influence. Some believe he died naturally, others believe he was silenced, and still others think he faked his death to escape the chaos of his life. What we know for sure is that Elvis Presley's death is a mystery, one that continues to haunt the public consciousness. The Elvis Presley file proves one thing: the king wasn't just a singer. He was a threat, a mystery, and maybe a man who left this world on his own terms, choosing to vanish when the weight of the world became too much. His death, or disappearance, remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of modern history. This was Film Central's deep dive into the classified file of Elvis Presley. The king of rock and roll left us with a legacy of music and mystery, and his death remains one of the greatest unsolved enigmas in history. For years, the world accepted the official story of Elvis's death, but the newly revealed FBI files and the many conspiracies surrounding his life and final days suggest there's much more beneath the surface. Did Elvis die of natural causes? Was he silenced? Or did he disappear of his own accord to escape danger? The Presley family's secrecy, the mafia's influence, and the ongoing sightings in the years following his death all point to a much more complex story. If Elvis's file could stay hidden for decades, what other secrets remain locked away by the government? The king's mystery endures, and perhaps it always will.